Welcome to the MVP podcast, where we talk about anything NBA. I'm Sam Holcroft, joined alongside Geigh and Payton Thompson. Before we begin, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP, follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. All right, guys. So in about, I want to say like 12 hours or so, maybe even a little bit longer, NBA free agency starts. And we're going to have some crazy news starting. That first day is always crazy. And then every other day after that can get even more and more crazy. So we're going to talk about specific big names that we think could be some good conversations. We'll talk about teams with the most salary cap. And then we'll also do a speed round of some other kind of big names on where we think that they'll end up going. So, guys, probably the biggest name. I mean, there's a few big names, but the biggest name, especially with the news that just came out today, is James Harden. You know, with the possibility of getting traded. There's a few rumored teams. Is it? What's the possibility of James Harden getting traded or just staying with the Sixers now?
Yeah, I don't know, Sam. That's really a difficult question to tackle because I feel like whatever avenue he chooses or his team chooses is there's going to be some kind of downfall to it. But as far as where he's at right now, I feel like that's the best position for his career if he wants to win, but also make the same amount of money. And I think it's definitely a key thing to remember when we're looking at teams that he could possibly go to, or maybe the possibility of him staying, is that I think you gotta know that he's gonna make the same money. He's gonna make the same amount of money no matter where he goes, right? So he could stay with Philly and make the same amount of money and have a much better chance to win versus if he were to go, maybe uh, the New York Knicks or the Houston Rockets, maybe that he's had maybe some kind of connection to in the past or some kind of report. So, but I would think I would have to say if I have to put a percentage on it of him getting traded or staying, I think with this recent report coming out, I think it's a lot more likely that he does get traded because I feel like if he wanted to stay, he would have just re-signed and maybe tried to get on a slightly longer deal because he could have got a 1+1. And at least they would have been a little bit more secure. And then at that point, the GM Daryl Morey and the team there could have had a little bit more time to make a move. But now they're kind of pressed on this time frame. So if I had to put a percentage on it, I think 70% he gets traded, 30% he doesn't. But I do think that there is a chance that he stays with Philly and realizes that that's just the best, place for him to try to win right now, and he's going to get paid the same regardless.
I don't know. Like, is it going to be like the? Is it, I mean, the way I see it, it's like you need the best place where you can get paid, but he's also probably looking for a better future contract as well. And I think with his time in Philly, it's starting to look like he's a little bit sluggish. But I mean, that's not the case, right? Though, if you have like the assist and I mean, a lot of his points just kind of transitioned to the assists, but he could make a much better case if he would have stayed on the Rockets that he was worth a max. Right now, it's a little questionable. People say, he's falling off. Do we really want to extend him? But like when he was with Houston, it was like a done deal. Give this guy a max. So I think that comes into play, and I think Harden knows that like you want to find the best of both worlds. I want to compete, but I also want to, I don't think he liked missing out on the All Star list this year. I think that really took a hit on him, even though he had the chance to win. And with some teams around the league starting to build up momentum and looking for that, next that additional star, like the Miami Heat or something, then you might have the best of both worlds where he doesn't really have to be as much of a distributor as he is or have to play with the MVP where he has to force himself to be the second option. There's a lot of teams where James Harden will be the first option. Um, and so I think that's probably going through his head as well. Um, so I just yeah, I don't think it's as clean cut as just looking for a contract.
Yeah. So when we were kind of thinking about, or I guess when I was thinking about this, I really kind of thought that James Harden was going to resign. I mean, Nick Nurse has come out and said like, "Hey, I really want James Harden. I I think that he can be an instrumental part of a championship team here." Um, but with this news that they look like that they're going to move on from him, like you look at some of those teams that were mentioned, and I mean the Suns. I don't know how the Suns can afford to do something like that. So I'm gonna have to rule them out just because that means they'd probably have to give up either Beal or Booker, and I don't think that they can trade Beal since they just acquired him. So I don't know, but I'll go ahead and go into it. If he does get traded, I don't think it's going to be the Clippers. Uh, I think it's going to go to the team that's probably more desperate, and I think that's the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks don't know when uh, their time really can be. So I think that they're willing to ship off whoever they think, like Emmanuel Quickly or Obi Toppin, some other guys that like may not be making the hugest difference right now. That Philly could be like in a few years we could have Embiid. We could get rid of Tobias Harris in that contract, and then we still have a younger core with Tyrese Maxey too. So I think the Knicks are more desperate than the Clippers. Um, I wouldn't say by much, but I feel like the Knicks are also more willing to give up more. So that's what I think who the trade suitor would possibly be.
I think when you also look at like different trade suitors, it gets really tough when you think about, Harden's probably going to give his exclusive list on what teams he wants to play for, maybe 3 to 4 teams. Then you got to think, what is the package that teams are willing to give up for James Harden right now? Like, what is James Harden's real value, And I like I mean, not don't necessarily like it, but I don't mind the idea of him playing for the Knicks or playing for the Clippers. I mean, I think if you look at player for player, I think Clippers have a lot more established players. Like, they want to try to build a winner around Embiid, and they have the salary to make it up. Powell, Covington, Marcus Morris, and guys like that. So they have the salary to do it to make it work. I just think if I'm the Sixers and Daryl Morey, I got to think, what am I trying to do? Am I trying to, play this off as a slight downgrade for this year, but maybe in a year or two it kind of looks better because we have that potential, or you know, it's just we don't know what direction they want to go yet. And with Embiid and him getting a little bit older, and also being a little bit more load management dependent, having a couple more injuries here or there, it's something you really got to factor in is who you're getting in this package. And I got to be honest, man. I think who would have the best packages. I think it's Houston, but I think they're out on Harden at this point, and I think these past 2 weeks have really made them not want Harden and try to think of other guys that they would rather have, and so they're kind of out on it. But I think if you talk about packages, they would have the best of both worlds. I feel like of a couple guys they could throw in there that would mesh well with Embiid, be win now guys, but also maybe get a Brooklyn pick or two.
I mean, I think it just goes down to how they're going to interpret their roster right here, because I think you could argue that like it is very hard to find like a more put together team than the 76ers, and it just seems like there's a lot of intangibles that caused them to lose in the playoffs. Harden was very passive. He's always been passive. Versus players like Jimmy Butler, who was just kind of a monster, who's had the kind of that Mamba mentality that was able to push him through. Embiid was the same way. In a way, Jason Tatum was the same way too in the playoffs. He was very passive when it came down to losing, especially in Game 7. So I think it's a very tough thing because like in terms of like players, where do you go from here? You have the MVP. You have arguably one of the best scorers in NBA history alongside him. You have an above average point guard in the league with Tyrese Maxey. You have the bench
Yeah,
that you need.
Tobias Harris as well.
You have Tobias Harris. It's just like what improvements I mean, you got rid of Doc, you know, so it's like it was Doc's fault, but then this has been happening for the last 5 years. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's really unfortunate and how I mean, we've been talking for about 7 years now. It's like trust the process, and it's just like every year, like Gage said, something just happens to this team. It was they fall apart in the Eastern Conference Finals, or no, sorry, the second round against the Hawks in the Game 7. They just can't get over the hump. They were the 1 seed, still don't make the Eastern Conference Finals. They ran into the Heat. I think it was that one. Oh no, I think that was still the Hawks year, but still, it's like they just can't get the job done, and it's just unfortunate to see how they just can't make it work because honestly, like Tobias is still good. They got the MVP in Joel Embiid. They have Tyrese Maxey who can only keep getting better. So it's just unfortunate that they can't make this work. So so do you guys want to call a team that you think that he's going to get traded to or sign with?
I I think I think no. I well, here's what I'll say. If you think about it, the only way I think that they improve from this year, um, and like, uh, the only way they improve from this year is if they somehow, yeah, you get rid of Harden, but if you can somehow also package and get rid of Tobias Harris. If you can get rid of that contract, that's a lot of salary cap. You can easily fill in that gap with you know, another high tier player, uh, or maybe just build around Joel Embiid a little bit more. Um, so I do see that I think if James Harden gets sent out, I think Tobias also gets sent out. I think the 76ers can pull that off.
I would say for me, there's only really one team that makes that much sense for both sides involved, and I think it's got to be the Clippers, man. Especially when you consider the fact that like availability has been such an issue for them the past 3 years that just having that one guy that maybe you could count on to be healthy for the games that the other guys aren't necessarily healthy for and get you that 2 or 3 seed instead of a 5 or 6 seed. I think that's really the biggest difference between the Clippers getting good matchups and not. But also, I think Harden and Paul George have an existing relationship. Don't quote me on that, but I believe they do. They're both from California. They're both around the same age. I believe they do. And I know I'm pretty sure Kawhi and Harden are also linked in a little bit too. So, and I just feel like he's the type of guy that could come in there and he would get respect from everyone and people, he would be able to respect other people in Ty Lue as well. So I think it makes sense on that front. And they have the salaries to match it up with. But one more thing I want to say about Philly and kind of their, trials and tribulations with the Eastern Conference, I guess I want to say is that it's kind of crazy how many better teams there has been over the past 6 or 7 years than them in the East because their roster, the past 3, 4 years has been pretty solid, especially for having an MVP candidate kind of guy. Ben Simmons before he fell off, Harden that was still averaging 20 and 10 a night. If you think about it, the Celtics have kind of ran the East for a while. The Heat have had multiple finals appearances, and Milwaukee won the ring. So it's really just Philly that's kind of been the punching bag for the higher seeded Eastern Conference teams. So yeah, they definitely needed to shake it up. So I don't disagree with the move at all.
See, as a Clippers fan, I'm just going to just rebuttal real fast. We can't give up too much, in my opinion. Like, because we're going to be getting 3 guys in their mid 30s. Like, I mean, we were talking off air before this PT, but it's like the Warriors in 5 years could be a disaster. And if we trade for Harden and we trade away for like 4 or 5 guys, like if Terrence Mann is included in that trade, I might get a little salty. Like I feel like that could be a guy that they could build around within the next 3 years if they try to keep him around. But Yeah, it depends on what the trade package looks like, kind of like what we alluded to earlier. Like, we really don't know, is he even really worth the max, like Gage said. So another player that could be on the move, he's interviewing with some teams, is Kyrie Irving. Now, there's been so many like reports like, oh, he wants to stay with the Mavs. Oh, he actually wants to get traded. He might actually just sign a different contract. It's like we don't really know what's happening with the news of James Harden. We know that he most likely is getting traded, but Kyrie is still totally up in the air. What do you guys think?
I think Kyrie is honestly just looking for a max. I think anyone who can take it, and I think anything that's happening and that's the media showing is just trying to put pressure on the Mavericks for trading away quality role players just for a half of a year rental of Kyrie. And I think Kyrie knows this. I think his agent knows this, and I think anything else is hoopla given by Kyrie because Kyrie likes to pull strings on the media as much as he says he doesn't like to, as much as he says he's the victim here. He knows kind of what he's doing. So I think I think it's all just a ploy. I think he's just pushing for a max contract anywhere. First one to say yes, basically. And I think if the Mavericks want to go ahead and do the what's the gamblers what's the gamblers like loss or the lost cause or what when you put so much into something and then you realize, man, well, we got to sign him now because we put all this stuff, that fallacy. So that's what I think is going to happen with Kyrie. Um, I think he's just looking for another max.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have too much more to add on to that besides that. I mean, I guess I have a little bit tweak to say to that, but I agree with everything else you said, Gage. Like, he, at this point of his career, I think him, his agent, and other teams that have talked to Kyrie and are going to talk to Kyrie in the next 48 hours kind of know what you're getting and kind of know what the deal is with Kyrie. So I don't think there's too much smoke going on with him. But I think instead of him looking for the max necessarily, I think he's going to look for like a long term contract, somewhere that he's going to get 3, 4 years if possible, guaranteed money. Now, I'm not saying he would rather take a 4 year 20 mil, or what would that be, a 4 year 80 mil. I'm saying that I think he would prefer if it was just slightly less than what he wanted annually, but get get an extra 1 to 2 years out of it, because I think that teams know that you can't necessarily count on his availability. At least the past 2 to 3 years show that. And obviously, there's been circumstances, we understand that, but just with everything that Kyrie is kind of about, you just never really know. And so I think at his age and where he's at as a basketball player, I think it's really hard to give him that long term deal. So, whether he's planning to play for that long or not, that doesn't really change the fact that they're going to have to pay him whether he's playing or not. So I think he kind of wants that locked in contract. But if I were to put a team on it, I would also say the Mavericks have to do it. They got to kind of I think what's going to happen is they're going to say, you know what, Kyrie, go out in the free agency, kind of see what you can find. Let us know what the market's looking like, and we'll be in touch. And they're gonna make sure that they have the best offer. Um, Now, if another team offers him a max suddenly, I'm gonna be very surprised. I don't know about you guys, but I would be shocked. So I don't think that's gonna happen. So yeah, with that being said, I think the Mavericks are gonna be able to re-sign him, and yeah, like Gage said, at this point, you're already too deep. You've already invested that trade that you already had, and that's basically all your defensive guys last year that you decided to part ways with. So yeah, I think he re-signs with the Mavericks.
So, you guys know the saying, desperate times call for desperate measures. So, I I think something wild might happen. I think that there's a team that will offer him a max, but I think it'll be a sign and trade. And I don't know exactly the details of this trade, but I've been looking into it. And now for the Mavericks, it's kind of like it is what it is now. Like you might just have to like kind of like go into rebuild mode. I mean, you just missed the playoffs while acquiring Kyrie, so you might just kind of have to focus on the future. You gave up your assets that you still could have made the playoffs with. So you might have to get some veterans. You might get some younger guys that you can team with. But Lonzo Ball isn't playing next season. So I think that the Bulls are very desperate to stay relevant with DeRozan and Levine. I think Vooch might be a part of that trade potentially. I don't know how that dynamic works since they just acquired Derek Lively from the draft. But they could. Kobe White's a restricted free agent, so they can match whatever offer. So like the salary caps can kind of line up with that, and I think that the Bulls will be willing to have that be a max as well because Lonzo is going to be out, and I don't know. I think they might get some sort of pass since Lonzo's missed 2 consecutive years that they don't have to pay him his entire contract, so that won't go towards the salary cap too, or their salary cap. So I think that that's something that's interesting. That's my prediction. I'm not guaranteeing it because it is kind of out there, um, and it's somewhat original. Just kind of reading some reports, like, hey, this could happen, but this is all also. I was reading reports that was before Lonzo was said that he was going to be out. So I think that the Bulls could be a contender, not only just to sign Kyrie, but I think probably a sign and trade. So then the Mavs could also get something out of it.
Let's think about that. And this is why. Okay, so the Bulls have Zach Levine. They have Zach Levine, who's one of the he's a probably a, would you say, a top 10 shooting guard in the league? The shooting guard level of shooting guards aren't like that good right now, I guess. So I can give
Yeah,
him.
he's top 10 right now.
He's top 10 shooting guard. And then they have Vucevic, another offensive threat. Although they don't really use Vucevic as they should, they force Vucevic to play off ball a little bit, and they don't actually give him the pick and roll option. When you give Vuce the pick and roll option, he's so good. But the Bulls still have not managed to be able to get that to work. Getting Kyrie, it's already clear that the reason why the Bulls aren't working is because they have no defense. Because they have all the scoring. They have all the scoring is what I'm trying to say. They have DeMar DeRozan who can hit the mid range. He's still doing pretty good. Zach LaVine, top 10 shooting guard in the league, who can pick and pop threes and also drive it to the rim. Either one of these guys can give you a bucket in every night. And then Vucevic, who's just amazing on the pick and roll. So my thought is saying that there's only one basketball, and none of those players even play defense. So yeah, they'll be desperate, but given their transactions, we forgot that the Bulls actually were a good team when Lonzo was on the court. And I think the Bulls are understanding that they just need a Lonzo replacement. Kyrie's defense, although underrated, I don't think he qualifies as this Lonzo replacement. I don't see the Bulls going for someone like that. Even all their acquisitions, they expected Caruso to come off the bench. And then sometimes you're asking for him to start. But even after all their acquisitions, like I mentioned this a while ago, Ayo, who's a great defender. Caruso, great defender. Lonzo, great defender. Who else? Kobe White stopped getting playing time because he wasn't a great defender. He was a good transition guy, but he just wasn't a great defender. And so it's obvious that they're looking for a Lonzo-ish player who can distribute the ball but also play defense. And I don't think Kyrie's that guy. Obviously not. You can see what happens to your defense, aka like the Dallas Mavericks. So no, I don't see it.
So then, who do you have Kyrie going to? You just have him staying with the Mavs?
The Mavericks. Either that or he just gets shipped off to somewhere where he is willing to get a long-term contract somewhere. Whoever gives the longest contract gets him. I don't think everything's in smoke right now.
Okay, so I have Bulls. Gage has Mavericks. Who did you have Kyrie going to? PT?
Mavericks.
Mavericks? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So another name that I thought was kind of interesting, and it's really weird that he opted out of his contract, was Draymond Green. Now, do you think that that was he opted out to take a pay cut, or do you think he opted out to get more money, or is he leaving? Well, what do you guys think?
No, I definitely think he opted out to get paid a little bit more money. But I think no matter what, he's going to stay with the Warriors. And I think the Jordan Poole trade makes it a little bit more obvious that they want to re-sign their guys and run it back, especially now that they got Chris Paul off the bench to kind of be that support guy that can come in if injuries happen, or just to be that six man that can run a decent pick and roll. And Draymond's going to be another high IQ guy to pair with Chris Paul. So, no, I think he's going to stay. I think he's just going to get slightly more money, but it may be on a slightly shorter deal, maybe a 1+1, maybe a I mean, I can't really see a 3-year deal being a thing unless it's maybe a 2+1, but I don't think I'd necessarily like that for them. But I think they realize that he's kind of their defensive guy, and unless they plan on like splashing on Brook Lopez, I think that's kind of the way that they should go, and I think that's the way they will go.
Yeah, I think the Jordan Poole trade makes it obvious that they're gonna try to sign Draymond Green. And it does make it interesting that they are looking for someone who can just basically, like Chris Paul, kind of plug and work into the offense a little bit. Um, as for what kind of contract he's getting, um, I think it's just dependent on how long the Warriors want to keep reloading this team. I think if whatever Draymond's contract is going to be the last bit of this version of the Warriors we'll see.
Yeah. So uh, when the news first broke, the first thing I thought was, man's taking a pay cut, because I just thought, like, I mean, that's just, I feel like a kind of a Draymond thing to do, because like when you look at his play style, like he doesn't really need his touches, he doesn't need his shots. He's gonna, get those boards. He's gonna play good defense, and he's gonna facilitate the ball. It's kind of like selfless basketball. So I thought that he was gonna be that team first guy, but then there's reports that he might be getting paid more, and I'm like, I guess here's the thing: is like he's been kind of playing that, like, selfless guy for the longest time, where now it's kind of like, okay, this is my last hurrah to get a payday, because like my contract after this is probably going to be less, because his play is kind of like he is on the downhill slightly. So uh, I do think that he's going to resign with the Warriors. I did for a little bit think that he was going to leave, just because like he could go to a team that's younger, that can carry him a little bit more, where he can kind of help a little bit. And I did think that that was going to be the Blazers. Um, I just I just had the feeling that, like, they have Scoot, they have Dame, Nurkic, Anthony Simons, and then you add Draymond. Like, I feel like that could have been good if they didn't re-sign Jeremy Grant. Uh, but the more that I thought about it, I'm
They
like, there's
they
there,
didn't
there's
resign.
no incentive to leave, really, compared to the Warriors.
They didn't resign Jeremy Grant though.
But he's a free agent, right?
Yeah, I think they're letting him walk. Or yeah, I guess it depends on if they do or not.
Yeah, it's because you don't get both. There's no point in getting both. So you can just get one or the other. So if they don't resign Jeremy Grant, then I could see Draymond, and I don't know who would offer more money between the Warriors and Blazers, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought, yeah, no big incentive to leave. Uh, Especially, like, I mean, it's rare to see someone stay with the entire team their entire career, and Steph, Clay, and Draymond could possibly do that, all three of them. So I think just resigning.
I also think it's weird how, you know, the Warriors have historically in their dynasty have been a extremely fast team, one of the fastest in the NBA. But with the addition of Chris Paul and possibly retaining Draymond, it's kind of weird how um, what their kind of identity will be moving forward. Uh, Jordan Poole is one of the fastest guards on the team, um, and so trading him for someone who was argued to be one of the slowest players on a bottom 10 like pace team, you're adding that player to come off the bench instead of Jordan Poole. I don't know. Maybe there's a scheme that that Steve Kerr wants to try out or has seen that works better than having Poole be. I don't know.
I think they just needed to get off the contract or re-sign Green. I don't think it's necessarily about wanting Chris Paul over to Poole. I think if they had the choice, they would have chose Poole all day. But it was just the money thing because I believe Chris Paul's on a 1 year deal, and even if he's not, I don't think he's making as much as Jordan Poole is going to make next year because Jordan Poole is going to be up in like the 30s. So I don't think it's they wanted Chris Paul, but that's kind of the best value they got for offloading the salary and being able to get Draymond.
So then, what do you think about the Draymond situation, PT? You think he's resigning as well?
Yeah, I said he's resigning. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's going to
Okay.
take a pay cut to resign, or he's going to get more money. Sorry, he's going to get more money to resign, but it's going to be a shorter deal.
Gotcha. Yeah. Especially because like in 5 years, that's going to be tough because like Draymond Green and Klay Thompson are probably both going to be retired. Steph might still be around, but I mean Chris Paul, now that they acquired him, he'll be retired
You think Clay's going to be retired in 5?
potentially. I mean, isn't he 35 years old?
No, he'll be fine.
I guess the way that he plays, it's sustainable, but
Steph and Clay can play forever.
I can't see them both playing for 5+ years, but I can see one of them. But the odds of them both playing past 40, I don't think are great.
yeah. So the next player we'll talk about is probably one of the more interesting centers that's available, and that's Brook Lopez. So, I mean, for the most part, we all kind of agreed for Kyrie, Draymond that they can all kind of stay with their team, but I think we're all kind of in agreement here where he's probably leaving the Bucks. Wouldn't you guys say?
I don't
Nah,
know if I agree.
nah, I disagree.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. So something's changed in the last week. Both of you guys
Yeah,
said he was gone, and now all of a
yeah.
sudden you guys are backtracking.
No, I
So
never
Let me
said he
tell
was
you.
gone.
Let me tell you what happened in my thought process. So about a week ago or a week and a half ago, there was stuff saying that he was going to get paid a lot, and from other teams like the Rockets or possibly a team maybe like the Warriors, so they don't re-sign Green. It could be half of the NBA. You can never not go wrong with a guy like Brook Lopez on a contender or a rebuilding team. But here's the thing about it: he went on ESPN, I believe, Wednesday or Tuesday of this week, and they asked him, "What are you looking for in free agency? What do you want for the rest of your career?" And you know what he said? He said, "I just want to win." Now, I don't think that he realistically thinks that wherever he goes, he's going to have a better chance to win and start and get paid than the Bucks. He's going to have all three. Now, yeah, maybe he's not going to be able to get paid super fat, 25 mil a year from a team like the Rockets who might win 35 games, but he's going to be in the playoffs every single year. And so, I hate to be generic like this, but and I know we've said it for the past few guys, but I gotta say, I think he's probably one of the stronger candidates. I think that's gonna stay with their team, and I think he's gonna get paid a decent price. I don't think he's gonna get a real bad tag or anything, but I think the Bucks realize that they need to be able to retain him and Chris Middleton, and Chris I hear is looking for upwards of 35 to 40 mil. So Brook Lopez isn't going to be able to make more than 25 mil a year, probably not even more than 22 and a half. So he's probably going to get somewhere close to 19 to 20 range and keep playing with Giannis. And yeah, I think he really likes Milwaukee, and it's kind of where his, I guess his career revitalized.
Yeah, you got to think that Brook Lopez. I think you just because you had a great year doesn't mean you're gonna get a great payday we the recency bias is real. What did Brook Lopez do the year before? What did he do?
I just want to say, for the record, I do think a team will throw a big bag at him, but I don't think he's going to take it.
But I don't even think a team would throw a big bag at him because
I think a team like the Rockets would that need a defensive anchor for 25 mil for a team that has 80 million. I think they would, but I don't think he would want to play for a team like that potentially might not even be in the playoffs. Probably isn't going to be.
but you got to be conservative with him because I was pushing at this because Brook Lopez did not play the year before this. Why? He was hurt the entire year. He was gone. He was that season before he was gone, and the season before that was riddled with injuries as well. But this year, he brought it all together. He was healthy, for the most part, and also brought in a good source of rebounding, blocks and shots, and spreading the floor. But Brook Lopez is an older player who losing that entire year to those back spasms really drove his career down. Although he had an amazing year, you got to think, man. Although he does deserve somewhere around 25 in terms of his production from this year, you need to leverage that out with the expectation that he's going to have to miss some games. That's just what it's going to come down to. You're not going to be able to pay him. You'd pay him 25 if you thought he was going to play like 80 games. But to leverage, back and forth, you need to pay him a little bit less because you're expecting him to play a little bit less. And that's, I think, how teams are going to weigh this out. And so if he were to leave the Bucks, which I don't think the Bucks, I don't think the Bucks are going to push too hard against his injury history, but they will. Then I see him going to. Really, he's a good spot for any team. Really, he's like the modern center right there. So anyone who's willing to throw a mid-level exception and is also a contender.
Wait, hold on. So before you go, Sam, I have to rebuttal that with as far as the health concern. So besides that one outlier year, that year before he played 70 games, the year before that he played 68, the year before that he played 81, 74, 75, 73, 72. Last time he played less than 70 games was 2013. So I don't think it's completely fair to say because he had that one year with his back spasms that it's going to all of a sudden happen again. Now, like it's totally fair to say that he's older and that it might be more of an issue, but I don't think it's fair to say that he's going to miss games automatically. I mean, especially because he played 78 last year. Like if I'm a young team, like the Spurs or the Rockets who have younger, versatile centers, like okay, specifically like the Rockets, right? I'm okay with Brook Lopez giving me 60 games if I have Alperen Şengün. You know what I mean? So at that point, you take that risk. That's kind of what I think about it.
And that's exactly who I have going and getting Brook Lopez. I I haven't had a single guy really, except for maybe Draymond, where I've come out and said like they're resigning. So why start now? So I think that the Rockets, mostly because they have the most money to play with out of the entire NBA, and they're also after the draft with all their contracts and everything. They are the youngest team in the NBA. They need some sort of veteranship, and Brook Lopez, he's 35. He could be that defensive anchor. I feel like he could be a decent kind of mentor for Sengun. Um, so I think so. I think the Rockets, that Rockets team might be the team that throws the biggest bag at him. And yeah, Brooke came out and said like, yeah, I just want to win. But then sometimes you see that like they're signing me to a 3 year, like 30 million, and then he's like, maybe I'll just take that. So
It's
I'm
like
not saying
if they get an offer that's too tough to refuse, then it's too tough to refuse.
right. And then he goes to the Bucks and he's like, "Hey, I really want to play with you guys, but can you give me that money?" And they're like, "We got to give Chris this money, so we can't give you that." And then they're like, he's like, "Okay." It was fun while it lasted. So,
But I still think you have to take his injury, and you have to. Otherwise, you're kicking yourself. If you have to be conservative about this. You do want to throw a large bag at him, but you can't throw a large bag at him like he's 27 years old. You got to throw a large bag at him like he's 35, and the year before he missed the entire season. Yes, he played this entire season, but
Let me propose this to you then. What if he gets a fat bag like that, but it's on a 2-year deal? At that point, there's not really any risk.
okay, I could see
At
that,
that
and
point. But yeah,
and
100% I agree with you with like the length of the contract. If he gets a 4-year deal, I will be completely shook.
mhm.
I think a 4-year deal to the Bucks would probably be the only one that would sort of make sense. But I mean, even then, it's still kind of like it might just be a
Yeah.
little too long because then that's 39 as a center, probably one of the more physical positions in the NBA. So, um, so yeah, so PT, you got the Bucks, Gage Bucks. I'm going Rockets. All right.
Yep.
So the last guy that will go pretty in depth. I didn't think you guys really wanted to talk about him that much, but you guys really, really brought it in. Dylan Brooks, how do we feel about him? Like, so obviously we're talking about him, so we don't think that he's going to China and he better learn Chinese or whatever people say. Um, so what do we think about Dylan Brooks? Is there a team that's gonna sign him to a big deal? Is he gonna get overpaid? Because I mean, there's a lot of guys that can get overpaid. Is this one of those guys?
No, I think actually he's going to get underpaid. I think Dylan Brooks is still a decent defender on really any team. It's not like the Memphis Grizzlies suddenly just stumbled into the number 2 seed with him as the starting shooting guard. He did bring something to the table. Now, I won't say that they really just upgraded getting Marcus Smart. I think Marcus Smart does literally what Dylan Brooks does, but better, except for the decision making when it comes to just shooting threes kind of out of the blue. That's what really kind of, for a Celtics fan, it kind of pissed you off when Marcus Smart would just kind of just pull up for a three. Who knows what he was thinking, but um, I think Dylan Brooks, he's in an interesting spot because I don't think he wants to take a back seat very far. I think he might prioritize, yeah, I'll get paid a little bit. I'll take a little bit more than the mid level. I'll try at least. But I also don't want to be stuck in the back of the bench. He mentioned that during a lot of his games, even the series, he said, I want to be me a little bit. I want to be able to, be utilized correctly. He would say that sometimes after a few games. So no, although there was a lot of kind of funny like memes that came from like China and all that, you don't just suddenly start in the NBA and then just go to China. No, there's a place for him, and I think it's a mid-level exception.
Okay, so where's he going then?
I think he's going to a team uh, that needs a go-to defender. Um, because yeah, Dylan Brooks, he didn't do a very good job on LeBron James, but he does tend to do decently well on smaller sized guards. This is why when I think that if the Memphis Grizzlies were to match up against the Denver Nuggets in the playoffs, things might have turned very south for the Denver Nuggets. But, that never really happened because the Lakers, I felt like, were just a better matchup in general. We could theoretically, think about JJJ on Jokic. Okay, you can think about putting Dylan Brooks on. Gosh, what would the matchups be? I guess Jaw. I don't think I put Jaw and Jamal. I think I put
You
Dylan
probably
Brooks
put
and
Dylan.
Jamal.
Yeah,
Dylan Brooks and
maybe.
Jamal. But what I'm trying to say is that like any a player, a team that needs kind of a defensive stopper.
So I'm gonna keep this pretty brief. I think, from what I understand and from what I've been hearing, I think he's gonna sign with the Rockets. Now the question is, how much money? Now I'm gonna say that I think he's gonna get probably the medium value of what the type of player that he is deserves. I think it's probably somewhere between the 15 to 16 million range with incentives, with winning incentives. I wouldn't mind giving him an extra 3 to 5 million cap kick if we make the playoffs or we go to like the second round or something, because I know you can build that into the contract. But as far as the fit itself, I've just heard that that's the kind of guy Ime wants to build the culture of this team, and along with one other guy that I've also heard about that we're going to touch on briefly in a minute. But yeah, like you said, Gage, he has a lot of issues with. I mean, you kind of alluded that he didn't have issues with this, but I think he has a really bad issue of taking way too many shots. I think his shot IQ is kind of jacked, honestly. But with that being said, if he can be what's the word, kind of pulled in a little bit and utilized correctly, like you said before, Gage, I think his game could look a lot more aesthetically pleasing. And even it's funny because he is a winning player. If you look at the teams that Memphis has run out with him, starting from when they first got Ja to now, he is a winning player. So you can't really hold that against him. But I feel like if you just roll kind of utilize him a little bit better, he might even look better as an offensive player. And defensively, what you're getting from Dylan Brooks. He's a stout guy that's not going to back down from the challenge. And although he might not be the most technical guy, or he might have some temper issues that happens, he's going to be that guy that's going to set the tone in the locker room and on game day. So I think that for that reason, it makes a lot of sense for a young team like the Rockets to need that guy that's going to play defense every possession and also going to teach the young guys how to score against a hard perimeter defender every day. So I think it makes a lot of sense for us.
I think whoever gets Dylan Brooks is going to get a steal. I think I think recency bias is too strong, and I think the best GMs understand this. I think the GMs will understand the media, realize to completely ignore what the media is saying about Dylan Brooks, because Dylan Brooks is a second team all defensive player who is going for a mid level exception. That is a steal. And then you automatically plug him into whoever player you're trying to guard on defensively. Although, shooting guard wise, you can, lock down anyone. So
I
perfect fit.
agree.
That's why I was thinking about
100%.
the Denver Nuggets, Memphis Grizzlies kind of, matchup. I think it goes south for Denver, maybe to 7. Maybe Denver still pulls it out. Maybe Ja's not ready to take that step, but that's different.
Yeah. So I'm happy that someone finally agrees with me. I think Dylan Brooks is going to the Rockets. I think that it makes sense, and if they can get Brook and Brooks, that's just like the veteranship that this young team really needs. Like you have someone who's like a straight up veteran. He's been playing since some of these kids were in like elementary school, and then you have Dylan Brooks, who some of these guys watched in college while they were still like in high school. So like dang, like I could play like him someday. And now that they get to play with him, and I feel like it's a good uh, opportunity for the Rockets, especially. I mean, like I said, they have the most money, which will actually just lead into the Rockets here. So I had Lopez and Brooks going to the Rockets. Is there any other players that you guys think that they can go out and get, because they do have the most salary cap in the NBA right now?
I really don't know what the Rockets like. I don't think the Rockets just grab everyone. I think that they're gonna prioritize.
You get a contract. You get a contract.
You can't just grab everyone and not have the plan on the superstar you're gonna get. there are some superstars out there. You got to plan around those guys first, and then you can decide: can we still get Dylan Brooks? Can we still get Brook Lopez? Can we still get everyone? You know, I think it's a very tricky task to get both guys, Brook Lopez and Dylan Brooks, and pull off a star, because you need a star. Otherwise, what's the whole point? You're gonna have Dylan Brooks alongside Jalen Green. Who? That's gonna take you to.
They already have their superstars on the roster that need vetted. That's
They
the
need
point.
vetted. Oh, okay.
Exactly.
The worst
Ja
team in the
Morant.
league just needs to vet, and then
Yep.
we're going to the championship.
Not
That's
right
just-
away, but that you gotta build that culture up. You know, that's the point of bringing in these vets, is that these high draft picks, Jalen, Jabari, Amon, Şengün, Tari Eason, Cam Whitmore, they're gonna have to learn from guys that know how to play and know how to win.
But do you want them? You want them to learn from?
I mean, defensively, 100%. But since I'm talking about bringing in more vets, I don't. As far as like me, because I am a Rockets fan, if we brought in Brook and Brooks for our off season and maybe like one more, vet minimum that doesn't, he's going to play off the bench, probably, a small forward, or I guess maybe a point guard. I would be super happy about that. But with that being said, I don't think they're going to be able to sign Brook and Brooks. I think it's more than likely going to be Brooks, and then Brook Lopez is going to sign on the Bucks, like I said before. And then I think one guy that you should watch out for that might sign for another fat back is Fred VanVleet. I don't see. I think another team that they'd have to compete against for getting VanVleet would have to be the Raptors and the Spurs. But from what I understand, it's either the Raptors on a long-term deal, or he's going to go to another team that's going to give him a fat bag for a 2-year deal. Because under the same principle that Brook Lopez is older and isn't worth a 4-year contract, you can make the same case for a veteran point guard like Fred VanVleet to get the max for 2 years. If you can hope, or the plan is that Amon Thompson is ready in 2 years, because he doesn't need to be ready right now. He's not ready to start right now. You need to get Jabari good looks. You need to get Alperen Şengün involved with a real point guard that knows how to play, not Kevin Porter Jr. Jalen Green's not a point guard either. So you kind of need that adult in the room. And honestly, no matter what vets we end up with, like you said before, we have the cap space and we just need adults in the room. That's really what it's been about, man, because the best adult we've had in the room since, I guess the rebuild started has been Eric Gordon, who doesn't really ever say anything and isn't really a big vocal leader, and Boban, who doesn't ever play. So, yeah, I do think vets would make a huge difference. Not only that, but vets mixed with Ime Udoka, that's the key to unlocking our potential for our young guys.
And you briefly brought up the Spurs, and they have the second most salary cap. So they just got Victor Wembanyama. Do they go out and get someone? I mean, they can go out and sign someone on a max deal. Do we? You don't think so? You think it's just full rebuild? Let's get these young guys.
Let's figure out what to do first before we just like, all right, okay, I'm envisioning Wembanyama is going to be this kind of player. We need to pair him up with this kind of guy. No, you need to.
We need James Harden, okay?
I see the vision. James Harden fits perfectly with Victor Wembanyama. No, you need to develop him and see what kind of player he is first before you start putting these things together and say, all right, well, this isn't 2K, all right? In 2K, I'd agree. Let's do it. Let's pair him up with this guy, pair him up with this 90 overall, and it should work, right? We need to see what kind of player Victor. Because worst case scenario, what if Victor is like, a bust? What if he something, Greg Oden style kind of just doesn't pan out? Then you just have James Harden or someone just sitting there, or just hoisting up shots for San Antonio. And I guess you can sell tickets that way. But you know who likes to throw up those shots?
Good luck
Fred
selling tickets
VanVleet.
with Harden in San Antonio.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's not realistic at all. I don't think.
No.
I think two guys I think you can look out for, because when you're looking at a team like them, it's another team, man, that has decent foundational pieces, but they need veterans. But two guys I think could be good veterans for them. One, Kyle Kuzma. because they have the money to pay him. Plus, I don't think he's going to want a super big bag. He's going to want, a decent bag, but they can afford it, and I think they can afford to give him a 3-year deal. And I think he's the type of guy that would be able to mentor Kellen Johnson, that can play the four, but also be a good connector piece with whatever point guard plays and Victor. And then the other guy that I think you got to keep an eye out for is Monte Morris. I think his veteranship and his savvy point guard play is going to be kind of what you need to unlock Victor's lob threat, and just his overall I guess gravity around the basket, but also being able to get set up. So I those are just two names that I like for them. But I don't necessarily think they're like targeting those guys. I just think that they would need or want a good veteran small forward and a good veteran point guard that can help Victor get set up.
I think. So, sorry, I was gonna just my last note on these teams with the Texas teams, Houston Rockets and the San Antonio. I think that okay, it is not necessary for Houston to go ahead and get a superstar agent, but I do think it's absolutely necessary that they figure out what kind of team they have and they figure it out now. What is going to be the identity, and what are we going to start? What are we going to be the best at? And because I feel like there's a combination of all these teams that are in the mix for the Rockets. Like, okay, they can get Pirtle, they can get these superstars, they can get Brooks, they can get Brook. But really, what do you have right now? You have Jalen Green, who is who can be your number two guy. I think Jalen Green is a great number two guy. I think he's gonna grow and he's gonna be like.
We're going back on the Rockets again.
Yeah, I was just saying my final remarks about the
Okay,
about the Rockets.
Go ahead.
Because I was talking about like Brooks, if Brooks going there, and this is me just saying about just give my spiel about all the free agents tied to the Rockets. Whatever free agents come to the Rockets, you got to figure out that if they're going to be part of this team's identity. I don't think it's so much about. Yes, it'd be nice to have a vet, but you need them to fit the identity. You don't just grab a vet just to have the vet. You got Jalen Green, who I said is going to be like a CJ McCollum for the team. He's not the number one guy. You have you have Sengun, who can be a great distributor. You could choose to have him be your centerpiece. KPJ is obviously gone. So then, what pieces in free agency will allow you to?
You're missing Amen, Jabari.
Amen, and Jabari. Yeah, my bad. You have Amen and Jabari too, as well, who are kind of developing.
And then
Amen
Tari,
still.
Cam, and KJ Martin off the bench.
KJ Martin, I don't think you put too much on him. He's nice.
Yeah,
he's good off the bench, but you're not going to really focus on building around him. You're looking at Jabari a little bit too, hoping Jabari can have a better season coming up.
Definitely. Yeah.
So whatever free agents are tied to Houston, I think it goes back and forth. I think some players, tinfoil hat on, are actually just spreading rumors about the Houston Rockets to drive their own value up because
100%.
Houston
110%. Because I think maybe 8 to 10 players this offseason have done that.
Yeah.
Because there's been rumors about us linked to everybody. And like guys like Draymond even. After he played us one random game, he's like, what this young team needs is just some vets, man. They need to get some vets on the team. He's just trying to boost his value. He ain't going to the Rockets.
I think it's a mixture of that. So that's what I'll say about if any. I'm not going to bring it up, but that's what I got to say about the Houston Rockets situation, and that goes for all players.
What about San Antonio?
San Antonio, I think any free agency that you're talking about here, I think just dead it. I think San Antonio doesn't make any major acquisitions rather than a young guard. I mean, they have all
though, unless they want to play pay the fine of the Players Association this next year for the CBA. They have to use most of their cap, I'm pretty sure. So they got to sign at least 2 vets to like 20-year deals.
Yeah,
because I know they don't have that.
Otherwise, they're just going to be just wasting money to the.
They're going to be the same
PA.
team, with no real improvement, and they have all the money for no reason.
Yeah, so I think with San Antonio, but I don't even think a vet is like it would be nice, but I don't know if it's absolutely mandatory to have a vet with. I guess who would pair up with Victor Wembanyama?
It's the same argument I think you have for the Rockets because they have Devin Vassell, they got Keldon Johnson, they got Victor, but they need an adult in the room that's been there, done that, and none of those guys have done that before. And so when you do that, Popovich helps a whole ton of a lot. That's a big difference between him and like a coach that's just kind of going to throw the young guys out there. So maybe they don't, but I think it is important.
I think they'll take it slow. I think free agency for the Spurs will be slow because it doesn't seem like they're going to be at most really competitive compared to all the other teams we've talked about. Um, if I had to link one player,
It's okay. You can steal my Kyle Kuzma take.
I
It won't
don't.
be
I don't
bad.
think I think Kyle Kuzma is going to Portland.
Portland, huh?
Yeah, I think Kuzma is going to
Oh.
Portland or he's going to the Pacers.
Mm.
All
Pacers
right.
shock me.
Yeah, so the Pacers are the third team with the most salary cap. We could just talk briefly about them. I
Yeah.
don't really have anyone going there, at least like no many big notable names, but Gage has Kuzma going there, which we'll actually talk about him in our speed round here in a second. But any other names that you guys have going to Indiana by any chance?
No, I like the idea of Harrison Barnes there, but with him getting the extension today, it's not an option.
I just have Kuzma linked. Uh, I also thought of the veterans. How about Ricky Rubio or something like that? I think that'd be good. An older guy who just fill in the gap.
For to come off the bench when Tyrese and Buddy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can see
I think
that.
he fits that play style kind of well. But
Maybe
Okay.
Derrick Rose is another backup point guard that could be a good backup.
yeah,
All right. So now we'll go into our speed round session. I'll bring up a player and in like 30 seconds, tell me who or where they're signing and any other comments that you want about it. So we'll start off with Chris Middleton. Where's he signing and like what's going on
but
with him?
he signed with the Bucks. Next question.
Yeah, he signed with the Bucks on
Okay.
a 3-year 34.
3 year 34?
34.
Oh,
Yeah,
34 each year. Okay, so
yeah,
then my thing with that is his contract that he declined was $40 million. So he
yeah,
just declined to take less money.
yeah. To
I
try to keep
don't
Brook Lopez too.
I guess, but I do have him resigning, but I do think a sign and trade is possible if they do want to move on from him. Uh, just because like the last 2 years they've kind of just fallen flat, not necessarily because of him, and not necessarily because of the team comp. It's just the last 2 years has just been kind of meh. So I could see a sign and trade possible. So then they could kind of revamp their team. But yeah, I still think he's going to just resign. D'Angelo Russell.
Resign. There's not a really good market out for him right now. Like, what's the market out for a player like D'Angelo Russell right now for what he's worth?
All right, let's do this. Got him signing with Toronto on a 2-year.
But what's the point? Like,
They need to replace Fred.
but like,
But it's not
uh,
gonna be anything what he used to get. I don't know what the contract looks like, but they need to replace Fred. Um, and I don't think he's going to be a very expensive option for his value. And they need some kind of lead guard because as of right now, if they don't resign Freddie, they don't have one.
So with D'Lo, I have two options. Um, I could see him going to the Mavericks if Kyrie does end up going somewhere else, or if Kyrie doesn't end up going to the Bulls, maybe some sort of sign and trade there with the Lakers. So like he'll end up going to the Bulls, but then the Lakers could get some acquisitions, maybe even get Caruso back. Probably not. Um, Fred VanVleet, and also does he get a max? That's my
No,
extra question.
he doesn't get a max.
What's your team gauge?
Uh, I think so. Fred VanVleet is always a guy, and if you look at his contract history, he's kind of the weirdest guy in the league. Why? Because there is nobody who is like, you know, the way he like models himself. It's like he bets on himself every contract. I don't know if there's a single extension that or a player option or anything that Fred VanVleet hasn't betted on himself. So I think the team that I think he goes to, I don't know actually. I don't want him on the Lakers, unless it's for a good price. I I don't know. What do you guys think?
He's going to go to Houston, and it's probably going to be for, honestly, probably like a 2 year, 37 each year. Because that's about 3 mil under the max, or no, 4 mil, because I think his max is 41. It's about 4 mil under the max, but it's also if it's on a short 1-and-1 or even just a 2 year, you don't really have to worry about it. Plus, you can flip the contract after a year if you think Aitman's ready. Because if you're on a 1 year 38, like some contender is going to take that.
Yeah, I think he's going to end up re-signing with the Raptors. I don't think that he's going to get a max, so I think that he might just take the Raptors offer because I feel like the Raptors they're not going to give him the best option necessarily, but I could just see him just resigning, maybe even for that 1-and-1 for that similar contract potentially. I don't think that's what the Raptors want to do, but I just don't know if there's going to be able to get anyone else to go to Toronto like a D'Lo, like Peyton had.
So you think he's going to take a worse offer from the Raptors?
Not necessarily. I guess I
Because
did say that.
I have a hard time seeing them give him 38 mil.
Yeah,
I
I don't
think
know.
when you guys talk about it, I think he does go to Rockets. I think he goes to the Rockets, gets a better deal. But the thing about Fred VanVleet, and I think that's a lot of teams picked up. Fred VanVleet didn't really have a good year. He is an all-star caliber talent, but he really didn't have a good year. So I do think he goes to the Rockets.
Okay. So Kyle Kuzma, I guess Gage, you already said going to the Pacers.
Pacers or Portland?
Yeah, I think he probably goes to the Spurs. My second would be the Pacers, though. And it's going to be for about probably a 2+1 player option. Probably looking at about, I mean, I wouldn't give Kuzma 30 mil a year, but I think they will. So I'm going to go with that.
Yeah. So I actually have him going to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I feel like that they're a team that needs to make a drastic move after a first round exit and not looking necessarily the best against the Knicks. They do have some cap space, and I think if they could pair up Jared Allen, Kuzma, Garland, and Mitchell, that's a pretty good 4 out of 5.
So
So
Kuzma is not a very good off-ball threat. They tried that with Karis LeVert. Karis LeVert, although not as good as Kyle Kuzma, they kind of play similar games at sometimes. They can be streaky. Kuzma's not, I find it very hard that he goes to Cleveland just because they do have Donovan Mitchell. He's going to be the number one option. They Garland is the starting point guard, and he's going to have all ball handling duties. He's one of the closest to the traditional point guards in the NBA right now. And then you have, I guess who's next on the ladder? It's God, I'm forgetting his name. Power forward. Needs to fix his shot.
Mobley.
Mobley.
Yeah, and it's not getting fixed either.
Yeah, he needs to fix his shot, and then Jared Allen. So I don't think they need Kuzma. It's not as drastic as you think, Sam. They're like 25, bro.
Okay.
My only issue with that, and I'll keep this real brief because it's speed round. My only issue with that is the contract because you're gonna have to pay Mobley coming up, and then I think Garland already got the rookie max extension, which is gonna kick in next year. So roster wise and like cap wise, I don't know exactly how he fits in there. I would probably more so just opt to get another backup point guard, maybe re-sign Rubio or Monte Morris, and kind of go that route.
Yeah, I can see it. Jordan Clarkson.
Who needs a shooting guard off the bench who will never who needs a shooting guard off the bench that you will never let touch the ball. You will never give him any ball handling duties. That's really what's going to come down to. Jordan Clarkson had one of the worst turnover to assist ratios in the league. The guy was turning over the ball like he was Jason Tatum. So although he was close to being sixth man of the year, he's not a very plug and play fit for a lot of teams. He's a liability. So
Yeah, my bad. Sorry.
no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I agree with you about he's not really that much plug and play. Like he kind of has to be on a team where he can get all his shots, and I think a team that kind of fits that mold that we haven't really talked about yet is the Hornets. I think he could play with the Hornets. He could possibly come off the bench if you want to play Rozier and LaMelo. Although I wouldn't do that. I would have Rozier come off the bench or trade Rozier, play Clarkson next to LaMelo, next to Brandon Miller, Mark Williams, and I think he'd be a good scorer to pair with LaMelo. And he's usually pretty healthy. I'm pretty sure too. So obviously, I think we can all agree he's not the greatest player on the market, not even close. But I think he does still provide value as a guy that can give you 17, 18 on any given night.
I think it could be the best. I think what you just said is the best like place for him to go, or the absolute worst. I think if how bad he is with the ball, and in terms of like kind of efficiency, pairing that guy up with Rozier might be the end of the Hornets right there. Uh, I think Rozier and KPJ and those sorts of players are not very good to play with because they also need their own shots, and so
I'm assuming that they wouldn't play together. It would be LaMelo and Terry, or it would be LaMelo and Jordan Clarkson. One of them would be on the bench and come in for the other.
yeah. But I don't even think that's appealing for the Hornets. Yeah, LaMelo can get the ball to him, dish, and take a lot of attention off of him. But I don't even think it's like, okay, then what's next? We get it out of LaMelo's balls. We get it out of LaMelo's hands into Jordan Clarkson. I don't know. LaMelo Ball's hands.
Let me ask you this, and this will kind of answer your question. Who wants to go to Charlotte? Nobody.
Nobody.
I think people would rather play in Detroit at this point because they have Monty Williams than go play in Charlotte with Clifford and LaMelo, who at this point hasn't really stayed healthy. Unfortunately, I still think he's going to be a great player, and Brandon Miller, who's a rookie. So they don't really have all these options, that they can be picky from.
Yeah. I honestly just think that maybe Clarkson just might stay with the Jazz. I just feel like the Jazz don't really know what they're doing. They're like kind of rebuilding, but like there's kind of like minimal direction. So I think that Clarkson just might be a short term answer for that, even though it's like not the answer that you necessarily want. But I mean, you got to try to go out and sign someone.
I think he actually did end up staying with the Jazz. And I think about it, I thought I heard something about him staying with the Jazz.
Gotcha. So we got two names to end off this speed round. Rui Hachimura
Gotta be honest with you, I don't really have anything to say about him.
I think he resigns. Well, I think he's a restricted. I think he's a restricted free agent, and I think the Lakers match.
Yeah. I have the exact same thing. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I don't think that the Lakers can get any big names this offseason. So might as well
I don't think
just,
they. Yeah, I don't really think they want to either.
yeah.
Same.
So that's how I feel about that. And then the last name we'll talk about, Austin Reeves.
Ooh,
Restricted
that's a
free
tricky
agent,
one, man. It's a tricky one.
unless someone goes above and beyond and pays him as much as pays him a ludicrous amount, which the Lakers do have leverage because they did draft a player who can also do similar things like Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves now is the shortest guard on the roster. Um, so I think Jalen Hood is honestly maybe a bit of a leverage pool because if you do take Austin Reeves, just know that if you offer Austin Reeves more than $30 million or something insane, the Lakers aren't going to match that because they have Jalen Hood to fall back on. So they're not completely screwed. Uh, take him. So I think he re-signs with the Lakers because I think people, although you can screw the Lakers by thinking, oh, he's a restricted free agent, we're going to just toss this bag at him. You have to be careful because the Lakers might say, okay, let him walk. We have Jalen Hood now.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I pretty much have two teams, and I think it's the Spurs again, number one, because they have the money. It's a need for them at guard position. And then also the Magic as well. A little bit less on that one because I think now with Anthony Black and kind of the foundation that they have, I don't think they would necessarily want to overshoot this and just pay Austin Reeves 120 million, you know. But I think those two teams are teams to look out for because they have the most money and they're also in guard need. Um, and yeah, I don't know if you had one more guy on the list. I'll let you kind of say your thing, but I have one more guy that I want to propose before we end this.
Yeah, I can literally just copy and paste what I said about Rui. I think he's gonna resign with the Lakers. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the Lakers can't get any big names this offseason. So I think that he just stays.
I don't know if it's that they can. I think it's that they shouldn't.
I think it's both. Like if
No,
they
because
wanted,
you can definitely
that's a
do
topic for a
something
different day.
drastic and go grab
He's
Kyrie
like,
Irving
that's a
and blow
20
your whole
minute
team,
topic.
Yeah.
blow your whole team to smithereens.
Okay. Who's the one guy that you want to bring up, PT?
I think it's a guy that we have to talk about because he's an RFA and he has a potential to stay or leave. But Cam Johnson, I think, is the guy we need to talk about for a second. And I'll just kind of say briefly, I think he's going to get signed and he's going to get matched, but it's going to be a team. The Nets are going to match him, but I think he is going to get overpaid by some team like Detroit that wants more small forward help, that thinks that they might be able to get him for you know fair market value. I'm not sure exactly what he wants to get, but with that being said, they're going to be locked into McHale and Cam Johnson for the next couple of years. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah,
I don't know why. Go ahead.
I think he's just gonna match, or the Nets are gonna match, unless if it gets north of like 22. Like,
Yeah, like 100, like 80 to, or I would say probably 85 to 95 mil is like the cutoff.
yeah, if
I
you're
think
paying that, then just let him go.
I think he's one of the most underrated players in the league. I think he just hasn't stayed healthy. He's had these weird accidents that happen every time. He starts. Even the Suns, we keep forgetting we're pushing for him to be the guy to start over. It was Crowder at the time. Was Crowder? It was Crowder.
It might have been Crowder or a Kogi, some small forward they
Some
had
small
there.
forward, but he was going to be the guy.
Yeah.
And for good reason. So I think the Nets will actually, would be willing to overpay him just a little bit because I think most GMs will find that if if he does get, I think he could be a steal. But I have a feeling that most GMs understand how good he really is and that he's just a little bit injury prone, and that's why we haven't really seen it. Hence, the uprising of like McHale, Bridges. I think that was Some GMs expected that. And I think Cameron Johnson's kind of the same way. You give him a chance to shine, and he'll shine.
All right. So that was our NBA free agency predictions preview. We talked about some big names, teams with the most salary cap, and a speed round of where we think some other players can land. But is there anything else that you guys need to add? All right. But once again, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP. Follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast. And check out our YouTube channel at MVP Momentum Podcast. I've been Sam Holcroft.
Geigh Zollicoffer.
Evan Payton Thompson.
Thanks for listening.